Chapter San the attack on Hao capital and Duke Sun Ho's alliance with the Rong tribes. After Duke Sun Ho sent his formal petition, his spies in Hao capital uncovered dangerous news. King Yuanfang had ordered General Hu Gong to lead an army against Sun State. A messenger rushed back under the cover of night, delivering the urgent warning to Duke Sun Ho. Duke Sun Ho was alarmed. Our state is small, and our forces are weak. How can we withstand the king's army? Minister Lu Hui stepped forward. The king has abandoned virtue, deposing the rightful heir and dismissing loyal ministers. The people resent him. His power is fragile. The Western Rong tribes are strong, and their lands border ours. Your lordship should send an envoy to the Rong leader, requesting their aid. Promise them the treasures of Hao capital when we succeed. If we act before the king can mobilize, we will win the war. Duke Sun Ho agreed. Your words are wise. He loaded a cart with gold and silk and sent an envoy to the Rong leader, offering a deal. If you help us remove the corrupt king, you may take the royal treasury when we succeed. The Rong leader was eager. The Son of Heaven has lost his way. Duke Sun Ho calls us to punish him and restore order. This is a worthy cause. Immediately, the Rong leader mobilized 15,000 soldiers, splitting them into 3 divisions. Right vanguard, led by Li Ding. Left vanguard, led by Man Yesu. Main army, led by the Rong leader himself. Armed with spears and shields, they marched toward Hao capital with Duke Sun Ho's forces, launching a swift and unexpected attack. Surrounding the royal city in 3 layers, they cut off all supplies and escape routes. King Yuanfang's panic and the beacon fire plan. When King Yuanfang heard of the invasion, he was terrified. Our plans were exposed. The enemy struck first. Our army is still preparing. What can we do? Guo Gufu stepped forward. Your Majesty must quickly send messengers to Mount Li and light the beacon fires. The lords will send reinforcements, and together we will crush the enemy. King Yuanfang had no time to inspect his troops. Seeing the Rong forces overwhelming the city, he hurriedly loaded Bao Su and Bofu into a small chariot and fled through the rear palace gate. Minister Zheng Buyu, loyal to the king, rushed after him, shouting, "Do not fear, Your Majesty. I will protect you." Together, they escaped through the northern gate, heading toward Mount Li. Along the way, they met Yin Qiu, who reported, "The Rong troops burned the royal chambers and looted the treasury. Minister Ji Gong has been killed in the chaos." King Yuanfang was devastated. Zheng Buyu, still hopeful, ordered the beacon fires to be lit again. The flames rose into the sky, but no help came. By then, the Rong forces had reached Mount Li, surrounding Li Palace completely. Soldiers shouted across the hills, "Stop running, foolish king." King Yuanfang and Bao Su trembled in fear, staring at each other in despair. Zheng Buyu stepped forward, speaking urgently, "Your Majesty, there is no time. I will sacrifice myself to break through their ranks. Follow me, and we shall flee to my homeland. From there, we can plan our return." King Yuanfang sighed deeply. "I did not listen to my uncle's warnings, and now disaster has come upon me. Today, the fate of my wife, son, and myself rests in your hands." Minister Zheng Buyu, loyal to the king, ordered his men to set fire to Li Palace to confuse the enemy. Then, he led King Yuan through the rear palace gates, attempting to escape. Holding a long spear, Zhang Boyu charged forward, clearing the path. Behind him, Yin Qiu protected Bao Su and Bo Fu, following closely behind the king. They had barely fled a short distance when Rong's soldiers blocked their way, led by Lieutenant Gu Liqi. Zhang Boyu gritted his teeth in fury and engaged in combat. Within a few exchanges, he pierced Gu Liqi with his spear, sending him crashing to the ground. The Rong soldiers, seeing Zhang Boyu's unmatched skill, momentarily scattered in fear. They pressed forward another half a mile, but suddenly, battle cries rose behind them, leading LED reinforcements, chasing at full speed. Zhang Boyu shouted to Yin Qiu, "Go ahead and protect the king. I will hold them off." He fought fiercely, cutting down enemies as he retreated. However, the Rong cavalry launched a sudden charge, splitting the group in two. Zhang Boyu was trapped in the center, but he remained fearless. His spear flashed like lightning, striking down anyone who dared approach. Seeing no way to overpower him in close combat, the Rong leader ordered his archers to fire. A rain of arrows fell upon him, leaving no escape. Despite his strength and courage, the loyal minister perished under countless arrows. Meanwhile, Man Yesu captured King Yuanfang's chariot, delivering him to the Rong leader. Recognizing the royal robes and jade belt, the Rong leader confirmed his identity. With one swift strike, he executed King Yuan, then killed Bo Fu. As for Bao Su, her beauty spared her life. She was loaded onto a light chariot and taken to the Rong camp. Meanwhile, Yin Qiu, who had hidden inside a carriage, was discovered and executed by Rong soldiers. King Yuan's reign lasted 11 years. His downfall was set in motion the day a wandering man picked up an abandoned infant at the banks of the clear water river and fled to Bao State. That infant grew into Bao Su, whose beauty captivated the king and led him to ruin. Through her deception and ambition, she replaced the rightful queen and ultimately brought the Zhou dynasty to destruction. The old nursery rhyme, sung by children long ago, had foretold this tragedy. When the moon rises, the sun shall fade, the strong bow and cord will break, and the Zhou kingdom shall fall. The prophecy had already been sealed during the reign of King Shen. A poem by scholar Dongping. He sought her laughter within palace halls. Beacon fires blazed in crimson light. He turned away from noble lords and let his kingdom burn to dust. A reflection by the Longzi historian. One foolish smile led Rong's soldiers to strike. The prophecy of bow and cord proved true. 18 years in time repaid, who could reverse fate's decree? The fate of corrupt ministers. None of the king's wicked advisors met a noble end. A verse warns of their tragic fate. They whispered lies and flattered kings, seeking wealth to last their lives. Yet one day pride was their doom, and history cursed their names. A tribute to Zhang Boyu's loyalty. Some fell by treachery, some by greed. Zhang Boyu perished for duty's cause. 3 men died for Zhou's name, whose bones shall history honor most. Duke Qin Shi, seeing flames engulfing the palace, quickly led his troops inside, extinguishing the fires as they advanced. He rescued Queen Sun Ho from the cold palace, then searched Jade Tower, but King Yuanfang and Bao Su were nowhere to be found. A guard pointed toward the northern gate. They fled toward Mount Li. Realizing their destination, Duke Sun Ho rushed to pursue them. On the road, he encountered the Rong leader, their carriages meeting. They exchanged greetings, each acknowledging the hardship of battle. Then, the Rong leader spoke casually. "The foolish king is dead." Duke Sun Ho was startled. "I wished only to correct his mistakes, not to bring about his death. Future traitors will use my actions as an excuse." He immediately ordered his men to recover King Yuanfang's body and prepare a proper burial. The Rong leader merely laughed. Such unnecessary kindness. Back in Hao capital, Duke Sun Ho organized a banquet to honor the Rong leader, treating him as a guest. The royal treasury was emptied, precious gems and gold loaded onto 10 carriages as gifts, hoping the Rong leader would take his spoils and leave. But the Rong leader, viewing the king's death as his greatest victory, made no plans to return home. His soldiers occupied the capital, drinking and feasting daily. The citizens grew resentful toward Duke Sun Ho, blaming him for their suffering. Realizing his mistake, Duke Sun Ho secretly wrote 3 letters, calling for aid from 3 neighboring rulers. Northern route, Jin Duke Ji Chil. Eastern route, Wei Duke Ji He. Western route, Qin Duke Ying Kai. He also sent word to Zheng State, informing Zheng Boyu's son, Jietu, of his father's death, urging him to raise an army and seek revenge. Would the lords answer his call? Only time would tell. Zheng Boyu's son, Jietu, was 23 years old, standing 8 feet tall, and possessing extraordinary courage and determination. When he heard of his father's death, his grief and fury were overwhelming. Dressed in plain mourning robes, he gathered 300 war chariots, charging toward Hao capital without delay. A scout had already informed the Rong leader of Jietu's approach. Expecting the attack, the Rong leader prepared his defenses. As soon as Jietu arrived, he wanted to strike immediately. However, his strategist, Lord Gongzicheng, advised caution. "We have traveled in haste. Our troops are exhausted. It is wiser to fortify our defenses and wait for reinforcements from the other lords. Once they arrive, we can launch a coordinated attack. This guarantees victory." Jietu rejected the plan. Osun must avenge his father without delay. The Rong army is arrogant and careless. If we strike swiftly, we will surely win. Waiting for reinforcements will weaken our troops' morale. With that, he ordered his forces to advance toward the city gates. The Rong fortress remained silent. No banners waved. No drums sounded. Jietu shouted angrily, "Cowardly beasts! Why do you not come out and fight like men?" Still, the fortress remained silent. Growing impatient, Jietu ordered his troops to prepare for an assault. Suddenly, from the deep forests, a massive war gong sounded. A hidden Rong battalion ambushed them from behind, a trap laid by the Rong leader. Jietu was stunned, quickly raising his spear to engage in battle. Then, from the fortress walls, the war gong sounded once more. The gates swung open, and another wave of Rong soldiers stormed forth. Jietu found himself surrounded, Li Ding in the front, Mein Yesu from the rear. His army, caught in the ambush, was overwhelmed. Defeated, Jietu was forced to retreat. The Rong forces pursued him for more than 30 miles before withdrawing. Gathering his remaining troops, Jietu turned to Gong Zicheng. I ignored your advice and suffered defeat. What should we do now? Gong Zicheng answered wisely. Huang is not far from here. Duke Wei is an experienced and honorable ruler. If we seek his aid, he will surely join us. By uniting Zheng and Wei's forces, we can reclaim victory. Jietu accepted the plan, ordering his troops to march toward Puyang. After 2 days of travel, a rising dust cloud revealed countless war chariots, advancing like a solid wall. At the center sat a noble lord, dressed in brocade robes and a golden belt. His white hair and aged face carried an air of wisdom, almost divine in presence. This was Duke Wu of Wei, Jihe, now over 80 years old. Jietu halted his chariot and called out, I am Jietu, heir of Zheng. The Rong forces have invaded our capital. My father died in battle, and my army has suffered defeat. I have come to seek your aid. Duke Wu raised his hand in greeting, replying calmly, Fear not, young lord. I have mobilized my entire state for this cause. Furthermore, word has arrived that Qin and Jin forces will be here soon. The Rong tribes are nothing to fear. Jietu deferred to Duke Wu, allowing him to lead, and turned his chariot back toward Hao capital. 20 miles from the city, they set up camp in 2 locations and sent scouts to gather intelligence on Qin and Jin's movements. Shortly after, a messenger arrived. From the western flank, war drums thunder loudly. The ground shakes with marching chariots. A silk banner bearing the character Qin flies high above the battlefield. Duke Wu nodded. Though Qin is merely a vassal, its people are accustomed to warfare. Their soldiers are fierce and battle-hardened. The Rong fear them greatly. Before he could say more, another scout arrived. The Jin army has also arrived, setting up camp by the northern gate. Duke Wu smiled in relief. With these 2 forces joining us, our victory is assured. He dispatched envoys to greet the Qin and Jin lords. Moments later, the 2 rulers arrived at Duke Wu's camp, exchanging pleasantries. Upon seeing Jietu wearing plain mourning robes, they asked, Who is this? Duke Wu introduced him. This is the heir of Zheng. He then recounted the tragic fall of Zheng Biyu, the execution of King Yuanfang, and the devastation of Hao capital. The 2 rulers sighed deeply, mourning the fate of the fallen. Duke Wu then addressed them. I am old and unwise, but as a loyal subject, I cannot turn away from this duty. To cleanse the kingdom of these barbaric invaders, we must rely on your strength. What strategy should we take? Qin Duke Shanggong stepped forward. The Rong tribes care only for plunder, gold, jewels, and captives. They will assume that we are unprepared. Tonight, at the 3rd watch, we shall launch a 3-pronged attack from the east, south, and north. We will leave the western gate unguarded, creating an escape route for the enemy. Jietu, you shall position your forces there. As the Rong forces attempt to flee, you will strike from behind, ensuring total victory. Duke Wu nodded in approval. A brilliant plan. Meanwhile, Duke Shunhou, upon hearing that 4 allied armies had arrived, was overjoyed. He secretly met with young Duke Zhou, saying, Once they begin their assault, we will open the city gates to let them in. He also advised the Rong leader to send the royal treasures back to their homeland, ordering right vanguard Li Ding to escort them. thereby weakening the enemy's forces. Additionally, he urged left vanguard Man Yesu to lead all remaining troops out of the city to confront the allied armies. The Rong leader accepted these suggestions, following them without question. Man Yesu camped outside the eastern gate, preparing for battle against Duke Wu of Wei's forces, scheduling the attack for the next morning. However, before dawn, Wei's soldiers launched a surprise raid on the Rong encampment. Man Yesu leaped onto his horse, wielding his blade to counterattack. Yet, his forces scattered in panic, unable to hold their ground. Seeing the chaos, he had no choice but to retreat with his troops. At the same time, the three allied armies launched a full-scale assault on the city. Suddenly, the gates swung open, and allied forces stormed inside without resistance. Duke Shunho's strategy had succeeded. The Rong leader, deep in sleep, awoke in terror. Grabbing his warhorse, he fled westward with only a few hundred soldiers. But as he neared the city outskirts, Jitu blocked his path, engaging him in fierce battle. At the height of the skirmish, Man Yesu arrived with his remaining forces, turning the fight into a chaotic struggle. In the end, the Rong leader managed to escape, though barely. Jitu, rather than pursuing further, entered the city and reunited with the allied lords. As the first light of dawn illuminated the ruins, news arrived. Bao Su had remained behind and had taken her own life. A poem by Hu Zeng on Bao Si's fate. Draped in silk, she was crowned as queen, yet died as a mere captive among barbarians. Though once she lived in pleasure's embrace, she could not escape her bitter end. Duke Shunho hosted a grand banquet to honor the four allied rulers. As the feast unfolded, Duke Wu of Wei suddenly rose from his seat, addressing the gathering solemnly. The kingdom has lost its ruler, its capital has fallen. How can loyal subjects indulge in feasting at such a time? All the lords stood in respect, replying in unison, "We humbly accept your wisdom." Duke Wu continued, "A nation cannot go a single day without a king. The rightful heir, Prince Yizhou, remains in Sun State. He must be restored to the throne. What say you?" Qing Duke Shanggong nodded in agreement. "Your words reflect the spirit of Kings Wen, Wu, Cheng, and Kang." Jitu, standing among them, said, "I have achieved no great merit, yet in fulfilling this duty, I shall do my part to honor my father's vision." Duke Wu, delighted by their resolve, raised his cup in a toast. The decision was made, and the lords drafted a formal decree, preparing the royal chariot for the journey. Many states offered military escort, but Jitu declined, saying, "We are not marching into battle. There is no need for a vast army. My own troops will suffice." Duke Shunho added, "Sun State has 300 war chariots. They shall lead the way." The next day, Jitu departed for Sun State, carrying the imperial edict to bring Prince Yizhou home. Meanwhile, in Sun State, Prince Yizhou spent his days in deep sorrow, uncertain whether his uncle's journey would bring fortune or ruin. Suddenly, a messenger arrived, bearing a decree signed by Duke Shunho and the allied rulers, announcing his return to the throne. Prince Yizhou was stunned. Opening the decree, he read the dreadful news. King Yuanfang had fallen to the Rong forces. Overcome with grief, he burst into tears. Jitu stepped forward and urged him, "Your Highness, the kingdom must be your priority. You must take the throne as soon as possible, to restore stability. Prince Yi Zhou sighed. I have failed as a son, burdened by disgrace. Yet, fate has left me no choice. I must depart at once. Within a day, he arrived at Hao capital. Zhou Duke led the way, clearing the ruined palace. Duke Shenhou, accompanied by the rulers of Wei, Jin, and Qin, along with Jietu and the court officials, greeted Prince Yi Zhou 30 miles outside the city gates. A sacred date was chosen for his formal return. Entering the capital, Prince Yi Zhou gazed upon the palace ruins, overcome with sorrow. After paying his respects to Duke Shenhou, he entered the ancestral temple, donning the ceremonial crown, and officially ascended the throne. Thus, King Feng of Zhou was established. After King Feng ascended the throne, the lords and court officials gathered to offer their congratulations. King Qing summoned Duke Sunbo, saying, I was once abandoned, yet now I inherit the royal legacy, all thanks to my uncle's unwavering support. He granted him the title of Duke Sungong. However, Duke Sunbo declined the honor 3 times, saying, if rewards and punishments are not just, governance will remain corrupt. The restoration of Hao capital was the result of the allied lords' efforts, not mine alone. I failed to prevent the Rong invasion, bringing harm to the former king. I should be condemned, not rewarded. King Feng, seeing his sincerity, restored his original title. Then, Duke Wu of Wei stepped forward with another proposal. Bao Su and her son defied all moral order. Guo Shifu, Yin Qiu, and their allies deceived the king and ruined the nation. Though they are dead, their names must be disgraced. King Ping approved the motion, ordering them to be posthumously dishonored. Duke Wei was promoted to the rank of duke. Jin Duke Ji Qiu was granted territories in Henei. Zheng Biyu, having died in service to the kingdom, was honored with the title of Duke Huan. Jietu inherited his father's title, becoming Duke Zheng, and was granted 1,000 qing of land. Qin Duke Yingkai, once a vassal, was officially recognized as Duke of Qin, joining the ranks of the major lords. Young Duke Zhou was appointed Grand Minister, and Queen Senhou was honored as Empress Dowager. Baosu and Bofu were stripped of all royal status, reduced to commoners. Guo Shifu, Yin Qiu, and Ji Gong, though their ancestors had served faithfully, were stripped of their titles, yet their descendants were allowed to inherit rank. To restore order, King Feng issued proclamations to aid the citizens, comforting those who had suffered in the war. Finally, he hosted a grand feast for the ministers, a celebration of peace and restoration. A poem for the dawn of a new era. The lords rejoiced to serve a just king. The people cheered for peace restored. With wisdom guiding the realm anew, the mountains and rivers shall rise again. The following day, the lords offered their gratitude and prepared to depart. King Ping appointed Duke Wei as Minister of Works and granted Jietu the title of Grand Counselor. He remained in the capital, assisting Grand Minister Zhou in governing the realm. However, Dukes Sun and Jin, due to their proximity to the Rong tribes, declined further roles and returned to their own states. Meanwhile, Duke Shenhou, impressed by Jietu's strength and wisdom, offered him his daughter in marriage. She would later be known as Lady Wu Jiang. Thus, the matter was settled and peace began to take hold once more. The Rong forces, having once ravaged Hao capital, had now grown familiar with the roads of China. Though driven from the city by the allied lords, their military strength remained intact. Feeling wronged and restless, they assembled a mighty army and began invading Zhou territories, gradually taking control of Qifeng until half the land fell under their dominion. Their forces drew ever closer to Huan capital, and for months, warning beacons burned without end. Meanwhile, the palace, damaged by fire, was barely half its former glory, its walls crumbling and halls in ruin, leaving the city in a desolate state. King Ping faced two grave difficulties. The royal treasury was empty, leaving no resources to rebuild the palace. The Rong forces threatened invasion at any moment, making Huan capital unsafe. Thus, he began considering relocating the royal court to Luoyi. One day, after court proceedings, he addressed his ministers. Long ago, King Cheng established Huan capital and also built Luoyi. What was his purpose in doing so? His ministers answered in unison. Luoyi lies at the center of the realm, ensuring equal access for all tribute-bearing states. Thus, King Cheng sent Duke Zhao to survey the land, and Duke Zhou oversaw its construction, establishing it as the Eastern capital. Its palaces and structures mirror Huan capital, and during ceremonial years, the Son of Heaven would travel to the Eastern capital to meet with the lords. This was a policy for the people's benefit. King Ping nodded. Now, with the Rong forces pressing upon Huan capital, disaster is inevitable. I intend to move the court to Luoyi. What say you? Grand Minister Zhou stepped forward. The palace lies in ruin. Rebuilding it would drain the people's resources. If we remain here, the Western tribes will seize the opportunity to strike. Relocating to Luoyi is the wisest course. The court officials, deeply concerned about the Rong threat, agreed unanimously. Yet, in the midst of approval, Minister Wei Wugong remained silent, his head bowed in deep thought. King Ping turned to him. Minister Wei, why do you alone remain silent? Duke Wu of Wei stepped forward, bowing respectfully before King Feng. I am over 90 years old, yet your majesty has kept me in the ranks of the 6 ministers. If I remain silent despite knowing the truth, I fail in my duty to you. If I speak against the court's consensus, I may offend my peers. Yet I would rather offend my fellow ministers than betray my loyalty to the throne. He paused before continuing. Huan capital is protected by mountains and rivers, bordered by Suihan to the left and Longsu to the right. Its fertile plains stretch for 1,000 miles, making it the finest strategic location in all the realm. The Li stands at the center of the empire. Its land is flat and exposed, vulnerable from all directions. Thus, our ancestors built both capitals, Huan to secure the kingdom, and Luoyi to host royal assemblies. Your Majesty, if you abandon Huan capital, the Zhou dynasty may never regain its strength. King Ping sighed. The Rong forces have seized Qifeng. They grow stronger by the day. The palace lies in ruins, no longer fit for a ruler. My move to Luoyi is not by choice, but by necessity. Duke Wu shook his head. The Rong tribes are as fierce as wolves. They must never be allowed near the throne. Duke Shun Ho, in his failed attempt to borrow soldiers, invited disaster upon us, allowing them to burn the palace and slay the late king. This is an unforgivable betrayal. Your Majesty, strengthen your resolve. Practice frugality and lead the people with care. train the armies, rebuild the kingdom, and follow the example of past kings who conquered enemies and defended the realm. If you capture the wrong leader and offer his defeat to the ancestors, you will restore the empire's honor. But if you retreat, yielding to fear, the enemy will advance further, consuming not just Qifeng, but all of Zhou lands. Do not let history repeat itself. Kings Yao and Sun ruled from humble palaces, and King Yu lived in a simple home. They did not require grand halls to govern wisely. The strength of the capital does not lie in its buildings. Your Majesty must consider this carefully. At this, Grand Minister Zhou stepped forward to counter Duke Wu's argument. The Duke speaks of preserving tradition, but neglects the necessity of change. The late king fell due to his own failures, not merely because of invaders. There is no use dwelling on past mistakes. Though your Majesty has reclaimed the throne, the treasury remains empty, and our forces are weak. The people fear the wrong tribes as they would fear tigers. If their cavalry strikes, the people will lose all hope, and the nation will collapse from within. Who then shall bear the blame for its fall? Duke Wu of Wei once again stepped forward, saying, Duke Shun, having summoned the wrong once, should also be able to drive them away. If your Majesty sends a messenger to inquire, he may yet have a plan. As the court debated, a messenger from Duke Sun Ho arrived, bearing an urgent plea for aid. King Feng unfolded the document, reading its distressing message. The Rong continue their invasions without end, threatening the very existence of our kingdom. I humbly beg your Majesty, remember our family bonds and send troops to our aid. King Ping shook his head. My uncle cannot even protect himself. How can he expect to protect me? I have made up my mind. We will move east. He ordered the grand historian to select an auspicious date for the migration. Duke Wu of Wei sighed. As Minister of Works, I am responsible for the welfare of the people. If your Majesty leads them on this journey, their lives will be thrown into turmoil, and I must bear that blame. With this, he issued a public decree instructing citizens. All who wish to follow the royal court must prepare at once for departure. The royal ritualist composed a ceremonial text, first offering sacrifices to the ancestors, informing them of the relocation of the capital. On the chosen day, the high priest carried the ancestral shrines, leading the procession. Upon hearing of King Ping's migration, Duke Qin Yingkai personally led an escort army to protect the journey. Countless citizens gathered their families, following the royal convoy eastward. That night, King Shan appeared in a divine vision, dreaming of a beautiful woman. She laughed 3 times and wept 3 times, then slowly carried the 6 ancestral shrines eastward. The dream bore ominous meaning. Her 3 bursts of laughter represented Baal Sis' deception. Her beacon fired trickery that played false alarms upon Montli. Her 3 cries of sorrow represented the tragic deaths of King Youwang, Bao Su, and Bo Fu. The bundled ancestral shrines moving east foretold the migration of King Feng, a prophecy now fulfilled. Not a single element of the dream failed to come true. Prophecy of historian Bo Yangfu. Laughter turns to sorrow, sorrow turns to laughter. The sheep swallowed by ghosts, the horse chased by dogs. Beware, beware. The bow and cord lie broken. The sheep swallowed by ghosts represented King Xian's death in the 46th year of his reign during the Yue year. The horse chased by dogs foretold the Rong invasion and King Yuanfang's downfall during the Jingyu year of his 11th reign. Thus, the Western Zhou dynasty came to an end, and fate was sealed by destiny. The prophecies had been fulfilled with terrifying accuracy. What lay ahead for the Eastern Zhou dynasty? The next chapter shall reveal the answer.